episode of Unravel with Lavelle. Today, I am in conversation with Mr. Satish Mugulavalli. Satish is a venture partner at YourNest Venture Capital, an early stage deep technology venture fund. He is focused in spotting trends, innovations, and helps build global organizations. Satish is also a technology entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience across India and Silicon Valley, and an advisor and mentor to several high technology companies, IoT firms, and incubators as well as accelerators. Thank you so much, Satish, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you in conversation with us around the resurgence of software in enterprise networking. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, Satish, you've been part of networking tech domain for over 3 decades, around 3 decades now, starting with your career in 90s. How does it feel to see a next generation networking company based out of India grow?
Well, I think, some of us grew up studying this entire networking and it for a group of some of us early on when we graduated, this was the place we wanted to be. And luckily, some of our early careers also kind of was in companies that were building networking equipment or software or tools. And that kind of helped us learn a little more about this industry as we go along. So a lot of things have changed, like you said, over the last 25 years. If we look at what was back then and what's back now, I mean, you just cannot identify, So networking, as in the way we used to define it earlier, was a list of standards and protocols that will help, communication, in a significantly uniform way. Because unlike many other products, anything that deals with connectivity means, the two ends have to talk, a similar language before you even get started, right? So a lot of this was largely driven by teams and companies in the US, and now fast forward to where we are, we have this entire generation of companies now being born on the cloud. Cloud did not exist back then, right? For us, the cloud was in general internet connectivity, where you just host applications, largely enterprise applications, and before internet came to the end consumer, and now if you look at any new modern company, is largely born on the cloud.
Yeah.
So to see an Indian entrepreneurs, Indian companies work on this shift of traditional enterprise networking to where we are today, I think it's really absolutely great to see that. And I'm sure, looking at the founders of Lavelle or companies similar in this space coming out of India, they've also had their journeys in traditional enterprise networking companies. And thereby they've been able to take that knowledge and marry what's going on in the cloud side and build this new generation, products. I think it's absolutely heartening to see.
Great.
I wish I was an engineer, network engineer right now.
Yeah, best time to be, right?
Absolutely.
So, you've been associated with Lavelle for 2 years. So, back in 2018, when you actually got associated with Lavelle, SD-WAN was still a nascent technology, right? So, what potential did you see to invest in SD-WAN back in 2018?
No, I think, we don't see this as SD-WAN as such, in the sense it's not limited to SD-WAN in that sense. We are seeing the shift from traditional enterprise networking to a software-based networking, right?
Yes.
Now, SD-WAN is a part of that, software movement, and every company you see begins with a smaller niche in a much larger space. right? So we see SD-WAN as a play inside the larger, software defined networking, system. And like I said, given that young companies are largely cloud based, these enterprises do not think the traditional way when it comes to networking. So just to give you a simpler example, for a lot of enterprises, Cisco is not the first call if you have a networking problem anymore. It used to be 15 years ago, right? You would either call a Cisco or call a bunch of companies like Cisco. That thing has changed because the IT department in a new age company looks at things very differently. From day one, they're sitting on the cloud. Their issues are different. So when we saw this, it was more of a, we believe that enterprise networking will move to a largely software, play. And there is this company that's taken the path of building from the WAN side, and eventually that will expand into a much larger play, and that was the thesis behind investing in Lavelle, and the fact that they had looked at one specific problem and wanted to solve 100% of the problem just enhanced our reasons to invest.
Okay. I'm glad you're talking about the whole software defined picture and not specifically SD-WAN, because that is the overall long term perspective for Lavelle as well. So, if you talk about these 2 years of journey, what would be the key highlights of the growth in the company that you find very exciting?
No, I think, if I were to just look at the growth as such, we tend to look at this in terms of pointers, right? I mean, one is obviously the company is growing in revenue, adding more customers, all that is great. But look at the quality of customers. You have the number one e-commerce company doing business with you. You have number one food delivery company doing business with you. You have the largest, banking company in South India doing business with you. So if you look at pretty much every customer that you are winning is a leader in their category. So what it means to a company is that, if I'm able to sell to a leader in a particular space, then almost you can nail that sector. And especially in the last year and a half, the renewed focus on BFSI and the banking wins that you're doing, and the fact that you're not only winning these customers, the fact that you're deploying at a very rapid pace in these customers also is a big testimony to the team. So if you look at just the growth part of it, I think the quality of customers and the fact that they are category leaders in their own space is an absolute fantastic achievement. So I'm very glad that this is the kind of customers that we already have.
That's great. And as we plan to scale 10x going forward with the existing customer base that you just talked about, based on your experience, what would be the pitfalls that the company should watch out for as we plan to scale further?
Well, I think it's a great question, right? Almost a continuation of the previous one, saying now you've done the hard work, you won the big customers in the category. What next? Right? And I think this is where the capability of the team, and their ability to scale is very, very important. Winning a large customer and deploying them rapidly is no mean feat, and I don't think it can be done by a team who is not experienced in this field. So, two problems we see with scale, right? One, people tend to scale early, so you are not ready. When I say you're not ready, the company is not ready with its processes. The company is not ready with its ecosystem around, because scale requires that not just the company, but everybody else who is part of your ecosystem also scales. Let's say you won a bunch of customers and now you want to multiply that 5x or 10x in that category. And if you have a partner network, if your partners don't scale, then you will still fall short, right? So almost you have to look at scale as in, are your people ready to scale? Is your process ready to scale? Are your partners ready to scale? And if any of these breaks down, your scale breaks down.
True.
Because in the early stage of the company, we really don't want a lot of processes, right?
Yeah.
You want to move fast, so you're very thin on processes, and you had a small team, largely motivated, very knowledgeable about the product.
Yes.
Engineers are supporting customers. You don't have a customer support team. All of this is growth, great when you're in the early stages.
True.
But when you begin to scale, you need to put a lot more processes, in place. And that's one of the biggest reasons why companies are not able to scale. Second thing is, just that you are scaling at a wrong time. So it's almost like, just to give you a very simple example, you buy a new car that does 200 bhp, but everything else around you, including the street and things don't change.
Yeah.
So you are ready with a vehicle that can really go at that speed, but everything else around you cannot scale.
Yes.
So that's one of the biggest pitfalls of scale, the timing of scaling and the fact that the companies have to be ready. And I think from what we have seen, from the core team to the extended team to the partner network to the support infra that you guys are building, I think you've basically ticked those boxes. But these are things that are really, really important. Leadership has to scale as well. Now, one of the benefits of this is somebody coming from the similar background to build this is very, very helpful. If today, if you were to start a new age internet business, you probably would not need a lot of experience before. Right? Whether it is a consumer play, or even a B2B play in a very specific segment. Like fintech, we've seen a lot of young entrepreneurs, who don't have a background in fintech, but they're able to think differently when it comes to banking, build companies. But this is one place where I think it's going to be very, very hard for founders like that to build. So given Karthik, Shamal and all you guys' experience in terms of doing this for 10 years before, that's really, really valuable, when you're actually scaling.
Right. Yeah, I think amalgamation of the right timing and the right experience is what we should be watching.
And again, timing is important because you may end up investing a little too early in trying to build all this, but then you really have multiple customers, each using different use cases. There is no coherence in how the product is used and all that. So right now, Lavelle is at a stage where none of those are issues. It's now you've been given a race car, you've been given a fantastic roads and a pit crew, and you just have to drive fast.
Right. Yeah. So that's very, very interesting analogy about the growth, and definitely something to keep in mind. Satish, you have seen networking has been traditionally been standards and protocol driven. So do you think it is the right time to bring in AI and API driven approach to enterprise networking, based on your experience?
Absolutely. I think that's the core part of software-defined networking, right? The fact that you are able to now separate out data plane, control plane, have a centralized controller, make it a lot more programmable, is what the benefits you get by moving this into a software-driven architecture. And you rightly said, networking protocols. I'll give you several examples. Because as a networking engineer, I was involved in writing a lot of this. So the early, implementation of OSPF, RIP, BGP. So I've been a programmer involved in building this stuff, right? So you largely build standard-based stuff pretty, easily.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a service provider, let's say, who wants to deploy and who has slightly different user characteristics, now you've got to customize. It's impossible for you to get updates done to these core protocols that easily.
Yeah.
So if you look at a body like IETF, build standards and all that. Early on, it was actually filled with technologies. Slowly, service provider customers started coming into the body because they wanted to influence the standards. And the reason why they wanted to influence the standards was, for these custom use cases that they run and to make the manageability of the network easier. But if I recollect right, one of the BGP community spec, it took over 10 years to agree on some changes. So this is not the pace at which the world moves, right? So if you look at some of the happenings there in terms of if you want to tie everything to completely standard based, where each device or equipment or data center, as long as you implement these basic specs, you will interoperate with everybody. I think with that approach, we today are able to build an internet where you don't have silos and people are able to talk to each other. But now that the fundamentals are built, what do you do for additional things, customizations that you would need? And there is no other way other than making it programmable. So it is already moving to an API-based system moment. The concepts of SDN came in, and I think that's pretty much the future, because today, given the amount of business and amount of life that happens on the internet, you can't build a fixed network. And the fact that traditionally enterprise networks have been difficult to customize, change rapidly. You have all at the same time making sure that the network is secure. You cannot take this approach. It needs to be a lot more programmable, on the fly, dynamic mechanisms, and that can only happen with the modern internet architecture, which is largely API based.
True. So overall, this approach of API-driven networking is need of the hour. If you also look at the counterparts of the infrastructure, the compute, the storage has advanced enough in last decade or so, and it is time for the networking to also catch up and basically deliver on giving out the best performance for application, for example.
Absolutely, everything is already virtualized. Your storage is virtualized, compute is virtualized. Exactly. So for network virtualization and management and security and all of this to come together, you've got to move into a programmable architecture, which is what an API-based approach will give you.
Exactly. So, Satish, you've been closely associated with Lavelle. You also have insights into the technology roadmap that the Lavelle is building. So, what is the most exciting part of the roadmap for you that will be tremendous help to our customers and also breakthrough in technology?
I think to me the most exciting part of this whole thing is the fact that you can treat a business user, whether he is part of the enterprise infra, as in, he's physically in an enterprise location versus he's at home, he's at a customer location, somewhere on the street. If you are able to provide the same security, same application, acceleration, same level of control, then you've reached a point where you've really, really taken location away from the network.
Right.
So once you take location away and you're able to build a system saying, no matter where the person is, you have access to, exactly the same infrastructure, all the while keeping your infrastructure secure.
Yeah.
And that's the holy grail we want to reach. And that's and the activities Lavelle is doing in the direction of getting there is what is the most exciting part. So because I'm now device agnostic, I'm location agnostic. All the time, none of the user experience for me has changed. Right now, there's a lot of stuff that goes under the hood to make this possible.
Exactly.
And Lavelle is driving a lot of these parts that makes it possible, right? So and I think we are there. We are headed in the right direction. We've accomplished a lot of stuff. But once we get to that point, then we know we've solved, the real user problem where we are able to disconnect location, without compromise on security or user experience.
True. And if in the given situation where everybody is working from anywhere, it is important to have that software defined perimeter for a user and have the uniform policies across a branch and either if he's working remotely from a remote location. So yeah, we are also very excited about bringing in this particular business user use case into the enterprise networking. So That brings me to the end of the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights on the software resurgence in enterprise networking. Thank you, Satish, for joining us today.
My pleasure, Smriti. Thanks a lot for having me.